So I kind of walked into this. I haven't lived in Austin since I think 1997. I now reside in Sunnyvale, California, but I'm happy to be with you guys tonight. And I will just start off by saying that House Bill 352, that is straight up fascism, and you guys should be out in the street over it. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so tonight I'm a senior fellow in the promotion of reality. And so what is the Society for the Promotion of Reality? We have just one mission. We want to liberate humanity from bullshit. And there's plenty of it. I'm going to give you just a quick list of some things that really annoy me and I think are bullshit. First, all lives matter. Just cut it out. It's pure bullshit. No one should ever say it again. Something that really bothers me for where I live, the entitlement of automobiles over every other form of transportation. You guys in Texas would probably be shocked to know that our suburban streets in California are actually much, much wider than yours. It's kind of bizarre, actually. NIMBYs, not in my backyard, courtesy of St. George Carlin. Voter suppression, bullshit, get rid of it. Hipster kimchi, Mr. Man Bun, go steal from somebody else's culture. Rape culture, gotta go away. Pearl clutching over the term bullshit. If that bothers you, too bad. And I've been informed that Austin PD right now is pure bullshit. We should be fighting against it. All right, so before we get too deep into this, a few caveats about tonight. I have blind spots, and so I'll just list a few that I know. We're talking about sexiness, and I am a very heterosexual male, so this is likely pretty heteronormative. I've tried to make some adjustments and so on, but empathy only goes so far. Women in public life tend to impress me more than men in public life. I think it's because women have to be more exceptional than men to get presence in public life, but it could just be that I like women more than men. I do have a lot of privilege in my life. I try to correct for it. I don't always succeed. I'm talking about general definitions of sexy, but everyone should have their own definition of it and live your life so that it works for you. But we're talking about the society as a whole, and just remember, your consciousness is an editorial process. You have some control over it. I am very aware of efforts to widen the scope of what's considered sexy. That's awesome. I embrace it. Everybody doing it, thumbs up. Okay, and we're talking about sexiness, not porn. That's a different discussion, maybe not for Nerd Night. All right, so why should you trust me? I'm a board member of a group called Livable Sunnyvale. We're a grassroots organization. We advocate for affordable housing, active transportation, and inclusion in my city of Sunnyvale, California, which I think we have about 160,000 people. I'm a mentor in this group called Braven, which is a nonprofit where we mentor college students of, I'll call them lower social capital. It's usually minorities, and it's almost always people who are the first in their family to go to college. And we try to mentor them into professional careers. And then I was a leader in a coalition to bring my city into compliance with the California Voting Rights Act. Yes, we have a California Voting Rights Act because, to put it bluntly, the Federal Voting Rights Act is bullshit, even before the Supreme Court gutted it. California Voting Rights Act is not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than the Federal Voting Rights Act. But I was ultimately successful in this effort to bring the city into compliance. We had an election, and I'm happy that I can tell my children that they live in a city that voted 62-38 for their voting rights to be equal with everyone else. So it's been a good year in some ways. Okay, I should say there's a silver lining in a lot of really dark clouds this year. So, all right, so let's get started. Sexiness is a construct, right? What's considered sexy has always been culturally and temporally specific. Yes, I went to UT Austin. I'm aware of the studies about hip to waist ratio and so on. And I personally think they've been thoroughly debunked myself. So some examples from the past, very specific, of what was considered sexy. Foot binding in China was considered damn sexy for about a millennia. That's really strange to our modern sensibility. we weren't there. That's all I can say. Examples from the past. Medieval Europe really loved pear-shaped women, like pre-Renaissance. When you look at their art, their risque art and so on, everybody's pear-shaped. And I think that's really what blows up the hip to waist ratio research. And this one's kind of fun. The ancient Greeks were really into small penises. They were very much about human ideals in their statuary and their art and so on. And all of it has small penises. They wrote about it too and so on. They actually denigrated people that they thought had larger penises. So that is pretty counter to our modern perception of sexy, I think. So, okay, so where we are right now, I think what's generally represented in our culture as sexy is mostly bullshit, right? It's severely biased. Just about every negative-ist word you can come up with applies to it. Sexist, racist, ableist, ageist, classist. I don't know, with the Republicans in power, some people think fascist is sexy too. And that's just wrong. It's artificial. Our current perception is very artificial, right? There's these extreme makeup techniques and lighting and so on. Every time you see a body and something that's trying to push sexiness, they're severely dehydrated. And then if that's not enough, we've got Photoshop and other tools to make it even more artificial. So why is this damaging, right? These images are put out as aspirational, and so people try to look like those images, right? And they're completely manipulated. And then they compare others to those manipulated images. And this is just about as negative of a feedback loop as you can possibly get, I think. We're actively damaging our youth by doing this. And we've been doing it for a while, and I consider myself pretty damaged, so I think it's time to stop. Okay, so if the current definition of sexiness or representation is bullshit, what do we need to do to get to a non-bullshit sexiness, right? Remember, it's a construct. It's always going to be biased and artificial. So let's quit letting immoral assholes define what is conventionally viewed as sexy. And let's choose positive biases, and our artifice can be inclusion, right? Different body types. I have my own preferences, and I'm going to tell you what they are. But before we get started on all this, we need some guardrails, right? There are things that I think are just beyond, that cannot be considered sexy by the culture as a whole. So first of all, children are not sexy. They just aren't. Pederasty, pedophilia, no, right? So for example, there are no sex symbols in the Harry Potter books or movies. That Hermione fan fiction, no, it's just wrong, right? So sexiness is meant to lift up, not push down. So Meghan Trainor had a really empowering song until she started dissing skinny women. Wasn't needed, right? She made her point before then. It should be a both and, or widening the tent, not kicking people out. Sexiness is opt-in, right? So if there's a public figure or something and she's starting getting attention and people saying she's sexy, or he, and they don't like it, it stops then and forever, right? This consent is sacred and it should be respected in all cases. Finally, youth in and of itself is not sexy. Young adults can be sexy, but nobody is sexy because they are young. I think that's pretty important, this youth worship that we have and so on. Yeah, maybe there's some biological aspects to it, but hey, foot binding was sexy in China for a millennium, and I can't think of any biological impulse for that, so we can do it. All right, so I've talked about sexy and all that and so on, and so let's just back up a little bit. What am I really talking about? I don't really think it's about lust. I think sexiness can lead to desire, but it doesn't have to, right? So my working definition is something like, I see that person, I think, oh, that person's romantic partner or partners, if they live that kind of lifestyle, they're lucky people, right? And kind of a corollary of is I really hope that person has a nice, fulfilling sex life, right? I hope they're having good sex. And that to me is, if I look at somebody and I think, hey, I hope you have a good sex life. You're sexy to me. So, all right, there's a footnote. Not everyone deserves good sex, right? So you need to be good giving and game. Thank you, Dan Savage. At a minimum. You also must not be evil. So Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Candace Johnson, Mitch McConnell, I could go on for days and days and days. They actually deserve bad sex, right? So it's okay to cheer for things like premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction upon these people. Or, I'm sorry, I'm a male, so I'm not really well versed with the problems that the female body would find frustrating. All right, so instead of going through an academic exercise where I try to build this from bottom up, let's just go to some examples of people that I think are sexy, and I think some criteria will become obvious from there. So, okay, you guys in Austin, you don't know who this woman is. Her name is Sarah Cody. She's the public health director for Santa Clara County, which is where I live. Maybe most of you know that the Bay Area was the first part in the continental United States, Hawaii actually did it first, that went on a lockdown because of the coronavirus. It was because of her. She led the effort. She convinced, I think it was 7 other health directors that this was the thing to do. Her office coordinated a nice press conference on it where they were socially distanced. and when we announced this, right? Now this unity is broken up a little bit. Santa Clara County is actually the largest county in the Bay Area in many different terms, population, economy, and so on. We're loosening up the slowest, but we bent the curve. We actually had the first coronavirus death in the country. We didn't know that. We thought there was one in Washington, but this woman is so competent that they saved tissue samples and tested them once they were allowed, and we discovered that we actually had the first death. And then they changed all the numbers, right? So she knows how to count too. So when California started counting as a whole, we had about 50% of the numbers. We're down to about 3%. My hair is longer than it has been since 1993 because I can't go get a haircut right now, and I don't really mind. And then when you see her in public, she's been prepared, fact-based, compassionate, and strong. She's openly criticized Gavin Newsom, who I think a lot of people would actually want me to put him up here on the list too. But and I'll tell you a little personal story. I was out working in my yard. My neighbor walked by. I think he's about 75. We stayed about 10, 12 feet apart. We talked a little bit. He's so impressed with her that he sent her flowers. So she's quite popular out here. One final note about her appearance. She doesn't have any makeup on, but she's wearing jewelry. And I'll point this out for, if you live out here, she kind of fits a pattern, so. Okay, now this woman, this is Jung Kyung. She's the head of the South Korean Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, she's pretty shy and modest, but I think she's led what has probably been the world's best response to COVID-19. You can argue that Taiwan has been better. Taiwan society, Taiwan had a jump on it. They speak Chinese. That helped them a lot, actually. I am super impressed because she convinced a secretive religious group to disclose their member roll. Now, freedom of religion in South Korea is just as big a deal as it is in the United States. And for a church to give that up, they cannot compel the church to do that, and they did this. Now, that church, which to be honest is strange, they were the epicenter of the outbreak in South Korea to start. I mean, they popped up to like 35,000 cases and 25,000 of them were in this church. But she got them in the interest of the public to disclose their roles, and the government has made sure that they haven't been harassed or attacked as well. Her presence on video briefings has calmed and reassured the public. She's pretty shy and modest but very confident at the same time. So she gives very short answers. It's kind of obvious that she wants to, she'd rather be someplace else than talking to the press. So she's not wearing any jewelry or any makeup. I have seen other pictures. She does actually dye her hair, but honestly, it costs $8 to dye your hair in Korea, so everybody does it. So, okay, for some reason there we go. All right, one more example of sexy. Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I'm not just going to talk about coronavirus with her. If you remember the Christchurch mosque shootings, really horrific incident, right? Where I don't know what to describe him. A white guy went and shot up some mosques and so on. And her response to it was perfect, right? The perfect mix of sympathy, symbolic action. She wore a headscarf to a memorial service. And then this is truly impressive. She implemented strong gun control less than 1 month after the shooting. She got it through Parliament less than a month after the shooting. I mean, how many people have to die in the United States before we'll even talk about it? And this woman got it through, frankly, with an incident that was much less than we've experienced multiple times in the last half decade. Okay, she did a great job there. People praise her around the world. She's also given birth while in office, which I think is super impressive. Her response to COVID-19 has been similarly excellent, right? They set the world standard for transparency and moving to different stages of social distancing. I remember I was getting kind of scared out here and so on, and then their standards came out, and it's like, wow, these people really know what they're doing. I actually started looking up visa requirements for New Zealand when I saw that, but that's a different story. They have officially eliminated COVID-19 from their country right now. That is, they do have the benefits of geography to help them with that, but it's a tremendous accomplishment nonetheless. Just to complete it, she's wearing makeup and jewelry. So, but I think all three of them are sexy, and whether you're wearing makeup or jewelry really has no impact on that whatsoever. So working backwards as these three kind of paragons that I've given, and I could have gone on all night with examples, but this isn't a pinup show. So the commonalities between them: competence. All three of these individuals are extremely, extremely competent. And that to me is the core of sexiness. Sexy people are competent, they get shit done, right? Next, all three of them have demonstrated great compassion in their public life. And I think that's a key component of sexiness, right? You've got to have compassion for others, right? So to me, sexy people, they work to make things better for others. It might be saving lives. It can be obtaining justice for others. Or it might be using their privilege or power to make meaningful differences in the society as a whole, right? So, so if you're looking for sexy people, hospitals and clinics are good places. Social justice nonprofits are good places. I'm married to a physician, and I'm working in these social justice organizations. So I guess I'm pretty blessed to be surrounded by sexy people all the time. All right, one final thing, right? Sexy people, you can't be an asshole and be sexy. That's just pretty fundamental to me, in my mind, right? So it's like one of those guardrails. If you're people who are assholes, just cannot be sexy, right? It's just contradictory. All right, so we have kind of a three-part test. So let's test it out on a few people. And I'm trying not to be heteronormative on these examples. All right, this is a guy who lives out here. I know some people in Austin are excited that he's talking about maybe moving out there. Yeah, you can have him, but let's go through the test, right? So is he competent? Look, I don't like the guy, but I gotta admit, Tesla's pretty awesome, and what they just did with SpaceX is pretty awesome too. And if they're successful in their missions, the world will be a better place. So yeah, begrudgingly so, he's competent. Is he compassionate? Yeah, it's all based on Tesla and SpaceX, right? These are things that will make the world better for everybody. He might be individually, well, we'll go to the next test. He fails the next one spectacularly. He is a walking asshole. This may not be making the news out in Austin, but he opened up his factory against county regulations in Alameda County, the next county over. He opened it up early. And yes, there are COVID-19 cases coming out of that. Yeah, only assholes do shit like that. So, verdict, not sexy, not sexy. You got to get all three, right? There's no second place here. All right, moving on. All right, so I don't know how popular this guy is in Austin. He's pretty well known here in the Bay Area. It is Pride Month, by the way. This is Leo Varadkar. He's the Taoiseach in the government of Ireland. That is Irish Gaelic for Prime Minister. I don't think they had Prime Minister back when they were really speaking Irish, but they made up the word. So is he competent? One thing he did while he's been in office is that he managed to get a referendum passed allowing gay marriage in Ireland. Let me say that if you guys don't recall this, Ireland is predominantly Catholic, and they voted overwhelmingly for gay marriage, and he had a big hand to play in that. So is he competent? Oh, hell yeah, he's competent, right? Is he compassionate? Before he entered Parliament, he was a doctor. You know, I got a thing for doctors, I gotta admit it. So been married to one for 21 years. So yeah, he passes that one too. I've talked to people in Ireland, they like him. They like him, they think he's a really cool guy. He's made them proud many times. Not enough for him to win the last election, but they still like him. All right, the asshole test. Talking to the people in Ireland, he passes the asshole test. He's not an asshole. In fact, he's pretty good at showing up assholes. On his state visit, he brought his husband, state visit to the United States, he brought his husband, and he manipulated official pictures to make sure his husband was standing next to Mike Pence at every opportunity. Hey, I could add another test. He gets like a bonus point for sexiness because that's active anti-assholery, right? So showing up assholes, bonus points for sexy. So he passes. All right, another guy, another tech guy. Yes, I am a tech startup guy, so I'm kind of aware of these guys. Is he competent? This kind of matters on. Well, yeah, he's competent. Amazon's a force, is a natural force, right? You cannot argue that he gets shit done. I think his wife had a much bigger, his ex-wife now had a much bigger role to play in the beginning than she got credit for. But yeah, you can't fix everything. Is he compassionate? And this really comes down to what's your view of Amazon? Do you think that Amazon makes the world a better place? And I kind of think the jury is out on that. I am one of those tech MBA guys, so I have a lot of admiration for how he runs his company. But I don't know if the world's a better place with Amazon. I don't know if his life's work makes the world a better place. So I don't know if he's compassionate. I haven't heard about him bashing the heads in the babies or anything, but yeah, I just don't know. And the asshole test. Yeah, he fails that pretty spectacularly. The guy is a huge asshole. Maybe you guys aren't aware of this story, but you probably heard about how he had this competition for cities around the country to kind of bid for his second headquarters, right? And they're offering up all the tax incentives that they can and so on. You know why he did that? He read somewhere that some other company got a bunch of tax incentives, to put a factory somewhere, and he was just like, "Oh, I want some too." You're the richest man in the world. Runs a hugely profitable company. You don't need tax incentives. Come on. So he fails the asshole test. Yeah. So definitely not sexy, right? So moving on, just some final words. Maybe you guys have some questions or comments, and my daughter's sneaking in, so I'm going to tame the language down a little bit. So this was a lighthearted take on I think a pretty serious topic, right? The things we do, the representations we put in our culture have a huge impact on the next generation and the generation thereafter. And we can look at ourselves and we can see the damage that was done by people making mistakes before. So as I throw the baby boomers under the bus and back it up, I do think there's a lot in our culture that pushes people to be sexy instead of competent or compassionate or a million other positive characteristics. I don't know if we can fight that. I would just like to co-opt the word sexy, right? Finally, this is just me. I'd like a particular view of sexy to be out there, but it can mean whatever we want it to mean. So let's just take it and fill it with new meaning, right? So it doesn't have to be foot binding. It doesn't have to be youth worship. It can be the exaltation of competence and compassion. All right. The Society for the Promotion of Reality. I hope every one of you is a member because it's something you carry in your heart. You don't have to fill out any applications or anything like that. Just live a reality-based life. And when you can, correct the bullshit out there. That's all you have to do. All right, so I've been talking about sexy for quite a few minutes now, and I haven't mentioned my wife, who we had our 21st anniversary on Saturday. I can talk about all these women as being sexy, and they're still downgrades from what I've got. So next month, it'll be 24 years that we've been a couple, by far the best of my life. I hope all of you are similarly as lucky as me. So you're muted, Amy.
I'm unmuted now.
All right.
All right. So thank you so much, Galen. That was a nice kind of light way to end the night. There's a lot of heavy things in the world going on, so a little lightness and declarations of righteous bullshit. I'm here for that. Apologies to small human. So let's see. Got a few questions, few reactions. Definitely got some people who agree that South Korea's response was awesome. There is a question, and you may or may not be able to answer this, just depending on your familiarity with it. But what are your feelings on reality shows like Love is Blind, where the focus is trying to shift attraction to people's personality traits instead of strictly looks?
You know, I tend to avoid reality shows, so I don't have a real opinion. But if they're trying to shift people to personalities, I think that's an improvement. They could probably go further, but you know, you crawl before you walk.
Yes, that's fair. All right, so question number 1 down. Question number 2, and given that you've been married for like over 2 decades now, you may be an outside observer on this, but what do you think about dating app culture? What are your observations from the outside on that?
I'm gonna be honest. So if anyone's curious, my company's NeoBloom, and it's about salary equity. You can look at our website. But one of the ideas, I was working with a guy before, we were talking about dating apps because he was a divorcee and so on. And it scares the living shit out of me, to be completely honest. It scares the living, yeah. I've been blessed that I'm old enough to have found the love of my life before there were dating apps. I don't know. It's inevitable. I don't. But the culture behind it and so on. But yeah, I've gone through, like, with a person. We went through like how each of them worked and so on. And obviously some were scarier than others. But I don't know. My brother met his wife on Craigslist. My mom met her husband in a dating app, and they've been married. So it was like 17, 18 years now. So it can work. You know, but I don't have any personal insight on it.
Well, that is okay. So I check that feed one more time. Oh, here's a good question, actually, and I think this would be a nice one to wrap up on. Do you think we're reaching a brink or tipping point where people are getting tired of seeing the same looking photos?
Okay, you broke up, but I think you're saying, are people getting tired of seeing the same representations, like carbon copied all over the place?
Yes.
You know, I honestly think that high definition video is actually kind of driving more differentiation because and also some social media, right? Because you can't hide as much from it. There's not as much artifice that's possible when you've got a 4K picture, right? So if you've got freckles, right, if you cover them all up, you're going to find yourself in the uncanny valley. What's her name? The youngest Jenner daughter. You're going to find yourself in the uncanny valley really fast. So I do think that, and I think also because media is available to everybody to express themselves and so on, and there's so much, people are more free to shop for what they like, right? So I think there's always going to be like this kind of standard class or this base class of sexy or beautiful or whatever, like Marilyn Monroe was in the 50s. But I think hopefully will evolve to where people will look at that and say, okay, that's nice, but what I really like is this over here, right? And maybe it's your freak flag flying, or maybe it's just that, you like freckles. Well, that's not part of the standard, or, it could be a variety of things, right? So I'm hoping so, because I have kids and I'd like that world. I'd like them to live in that world rather than, where we've been.
Lovely note. Did you have any links that you wanted to share for organizations that people might want to take a look at, or are we just going to?
We can just leave it here.
Excellent.
If you're interested in what we do with activism in California, this livable Sunnyvale, it's all about affordable and more housing, because we don't have enough out here. But you could take a look, and you could see that you probably better start fighting now, because you are importing a lot of our culture, right? So as more people come, right? And the NIMBYs are a huge problem. So you could see the kind of fights we're in now, and it gets highly technical actually around housing bills and so on. And I know more about zoning than anybody should want to know. So.